And so, at the end of his journey, Mephibosheth leaves a legacy that echoes the values of access, loyalty, and redemption. He showed that even amid adversity, it is possible to find purpose, a place where we are whole. And perhaps that is the deepest legacy of his life. The reminder that we all have intrinsic worth, a dignity that neither falls, nor betrayals, nor losses can take away. And so, with his story marked by grace and redemption, he closes his path, leaving us the inspiration to seek our true identity as well. And now, after following Mephibosheth's journey, the big question arises: what will you do with this knowledge? His story is not just a narrative of the past, but an invitation to reflect on what truly matters in our lives. Are we valuing the people around us? Will we understand the power of kindness and true friendship? Think about how you can apply these lessons. Whether by extending grace to someone, maintaining your leadership in times of hardship, or simply accepting your own imperfections. Imagine the impact this could have on your journey. After all, isn't it amazing to know that our identity doesn't depend on wealth or status, but on those who welcome and value us for who we are? How to put this into practice? Have you ever asked yourself what your life represents to others, and what legacy you want to leave behind? Think about it. And if you want to keep diving into stories that touch the heart and transform perspectives, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There is so much more to learn, and each story can be a new inspiration. Let's discover together what else the Bible has to teach us. Tie-ins long afterward. Remembering the bond of loyalty, David decides not only to rescue Mephibosheth but to restore him. How often, in our own lives, are we touched by unexpected acts of grace? A friend extends a helping hand, help arrives out of nowhere, just as Mephibosheth could never have imagined the king would call him back. David's action is more than just a symbolic gesture. He restores to Mephibosheth everything that had once been taken from him. He returns the family lands, which once represented his heritage and identity. This wasn't just an act of charity, but a complete restoration. It's as if David were saying, "You belong here, and I place you back in this position." More than that, he invites him to the royal table, a gesture that not only rescues but also honors. This is true grace, not merely giving what's needed but going beyond, offering dignity and a sense of belonging. It's a powerful example of how an act can restore more than status. It can bring a heart back to life. Imagine the scene. Mephibosheth, in Lo-debar, used to exclusion, receives word that the king wants to see him. What must he have felt? Fear, perhaps. Insecurity. But above all, a question: why? Many of us also grapple with doubts when life offers us something unexpected. A gesture of kindness that seems too great. Distrust arises. For how can we accept something so generous? Yet David's invitation serves as a reminder that, at times, grace reaches us without apparent reason. This unexpected gesture of loyalty and generosity is a true symbol of how sometimes the promises we make in friendship echo through generations. By inviting him to the royal table, David was restoring not only Mephibosheth's position, but also his inner worth. That's the beauty of David's act. He not only reminded Mephibosheth of who he once was, but allowed him to reframe his own story. It's as if the story of fall and exile finally found a new chapter. In that time, the table was not merely a place to eat, but a symbol of inclusion, of accessibility. By sitting there, Mephibosheth affirmed, with every meal, that his identity was not lost. For many of us, these invitations to the table might appear as new opportunities, unexpected reconciliations, or moments when life decides to honor us, even when we feel unworthy. But, of course, Mephibosheth's life still held more lessons. Because not every act of grace is received easily, and not every promise fulfills without challenges. Shadows still surrounded him, and Ziba, Mephibosheth's servant, would be one of those elements testing this new phase of his life. Let's see what happens when the past returns to challenge the present. The story of Mephibosheth, alongside David, reflects something profoundly human. He, a man with a past of glory and a present of limitations, becomes almost a mirror of our own vulnerability. The seat at the royal table didn't erase his history but offered him a place of dignity, even amid fragility. When we look at him, we see the strength that exists in accepting one's condition without losing one's essence. Isn't that what we all seek? A chance to be accepted and included, despite our flaws? His story resonates in each of us, showing that grace doesn't wait for perfection. But David's table was not just a place to eat, it was a living proof of loyalty and the promise of friendship. Mephibosheth, seated there, was a constant reminder of David's commitment to Jonathan. This is the strength of true alliances. Often in life, we find people who welcome us not for what we have to offer, but for the value they see in us. Reflecting on this, who in your life serves as a David? Who do you welcome for who they are? Mephibosheth's story makes us question if we, too, have symbolic tables around us, spaces where we can be ourselves. This contrast between Mephibosheth's weaknesses and the honor he received is what makes his journey so powerful. He was reminded that, although physically broken, he was not forgotten. Here lies a valuable lesson. Dignity isn't about what you possess or your condition, but about the worth bestowed upon you. The grace granted to him by David was a reminder that not everything broken is lost. Often, it's in our weakness that we find our true strength. Remember this next time you feel undervalued. Maybe what you need isn't a change of condition, but a change of perspective. The story of Mephibosheth and David also teaches us that redemption is possible even in the most complex stories. He bore a mark, a constant reminder of his fall, but that didn't prevent David from showing compassion. In a world where we're so often judged by our failures, this story reminds us that there are people who see beyond appearances. How often do we find ourselves looking at others' mistakes, forgetting we also have our own? It's easy to point out flaws, but what truly elevates us is the ability to look beyond and offer welcome. Of course, Mephibosheth's peace beside David would not remain free from challenges. The scene was about to become complicated, and his loyalty, already a deep mark of his character, would be put to the test. Ziba, his servant, would step onto the stage with an accusation that would test David's trust. Let's see how friendship and grace withstand the weight of betrayal. Betrayal always carries a bitter dose of surprise and disappointment, and for Mephibosheth, this experience came through Ziba, his very own servant. Imagine, someone who should have looked out for his interests falsely accuses him, putting at risk everything he had gained alongside David. Betrayal, especially from someone so close, is a deep blow, almost like an invisible blade piercing trust and loyalty. Many of us have experienced this, and we know the weight of doubt. With an act of disloyalty, Ziba sowed uncertainty in the king's heart. And anyone who has been betrayed knows that feeling of discomfort, of wondering, will trust be shaken forever? This accusation brought to light a vulnerability that Mephibosheth carried. After all, he couldn't fully defend himself. His body didn't allow him to go to the king as a healthy man would. This brings us to reflect on the limitations we all face at some point. Not just physical constraints, but also those imposed by situations beyond our control. How many times do we want to shout our truth? But do we feel voiceless, trapped in uncertainty? Mephibosheth, a man who has already faced exclusion, now has to deal with others' distrust, something only those who have been unjustly accused can truly understand. What complicates the situation further is the dilemma that arises for David. He who knew and respected Mephibosheth's story now found himself facing a doubt. And Ziba, by making this accusation, not only attacked his lord's character but also put into question the very grace David had extended. What to do when trust is shaken? In our lives, doubt often enters like a shadow, making us question what once seemed solid. This struggle between truth and lies, between loyalty and betrayal, is an internal battle many face daily. And finally, there's the impact of this betrayal on Mephibosheth's life. After losing so much, he now had to cope with the possibility of losing his relationship with the king, his dignity, everything that had been restored. How often do we feel this way, as if every gain could easily be taken away due to someone else's misstep? This kind of struggle teaches us something profound about resilience. It's the ability to stay firm even when trust is tested. Because, ultimately, the strength of a relationship is revealed in crises, not in days of peace. But even amid betrayal, something still shone in Mephibosheth's story. He had faced loss before, and now it was yet another test. Ziba, with his deceit, may have planted a seed of doubt, but could this blow really erase the mark of grace that David had left? Mephibosheth's path still had something to reveal about redemption, about how even betrayal can turn into a lesson. Let's discover what happens when loyalty is tested and restoration goes beyond what wealth can buy. After so many losses and betrayals, Mephibosheth found something money could never restore: dignity. David, by restoring him to the royal table, offered him more than lands and possessions. He offered him a place of belonging. Sitting beside the king was, for Mephibosheth, an affirmation that he was not just a survivor but someone worthy of honor and respect. Often, in life, we find that true value is not in the wealth we accumulate but in the relationships we cultivate. An act of respect, like David's, can restore a person in a way that no fortune in the world could achieve. Sitting at the king's table, day after day, was like a silent reminder that he had a place, regardless of his failings and physical limitations. The royal table was more than a piece of furniture. It was a symbol of accessibility. Imagine if, in our own lives, we could offer this same accessibility to those around us, showing that someone's worth isn't limited to their abilities or possessions but to who they are within. David's gesture is an invitation for us to reflect on how we treat those who go through hardships, those whom the world might forget but who, in our eyes, are still worthy of respect. Even without fully recovering his lands, Mephibosheth was not left adrift. He had his dignity and identity restored. How many of us have longed for moments when, despite material losses, we found in honor and respect something of immeasurable value? He is an example that not everything we lose defines who we are. And by sitting with the king, he reminded himself that despite all losses, there was still a place where he was cherished. In our journey, we may also need to learn that what matters is not always what we possess but the people who welcome us. And so, at the end of his journey, Mephibosheth leaves a legacy that echoes the values of access, loyalty, and redemption. He showed that even amid adversity, it is possible to find purpose, a place where we are whole. And perhaps that is the deepest legacy of his life. The reminder that we all have intrinsic worth, a dignity that neither falls, nor betrayals, nor losses can take away. And so, with his story marked by grace and redemption, he closes his path, leaving us the inspiration to seek our true identity as well. And now, after following Mephibosheth's journey, the big question arises: what will you do with this knowledge? His story is not just a narrative of the past, but an invitation to reflect on what truly matters in our lives. Are we valuing the people around us? Will we understand the power of kindness and true friendship? Think about how you can apply these lessons. Whether by extending grace to someone, maintaining your leadership in times of hardship, or simply accepting your own imperfections. Imagine the impact this could have on your journey. After all, isn't it amazing to know that our identity doesn't depend on wealth or status, but on those who welcome and value us for who we are? How to put this into practice? Have you ever asked yourself what your life represents to others, and what legacy you want to leave behind? Think about it. And if you want to keep diving into stories that touch the heart and transform perspectives, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There is so much more to learn, and each story can be a new inspiration. Let's discover together what else the Bible has to teach us.